And happy Wednesday night there to Seahawks land. Gentlemen, happy Wednesday.
Hello there.
Hello, all.
So, you might not be able to hear this when it comes through, but Ross is fired up. Fired up for all the wrong reasons.
Fantasy footballs.
Yeah, we're going to talk about fantasy football. No, it's kind of a bad week to be a Seahawks fan, you know. Seahawks suffer an embarrassing loss. They gave up the go-ahead score in 4 plays after Redskins go 70 yards after 20, 30 seconds before Seahawks score on what looks like to be the game winner from Russell Wilson to Doug Baldwin. Seahawks fall to 5-3, and they're a game behind the NFC West leading LA Rams again. Last time it was a bye week, now it's because they've lost another game. Seattle's kicker misses 3 field goals. At least one of those would have tied the game, and 2 would have won the game. The short week means it's a quick turnaround because we got Thursday night football in Arizona. Means you can't make too many changes, especially at the kicking position. But Dion Jordan's coming back. He just got activated after not playing since 2014. But in order to make a roster spot, Seahawks put Odiambo on the IR because he's got fingers that won't set. And we're back to round robin with Thomas Rawls scheduled to carry the load with Lacy already rolled out. So, gentlemen, that is our week. We got football tomorrow, though, so that's something.
That's something I've never experienced before, having fingers that won't set.
That must be really bad, right?
That must suck.
Like,
it sounds like a made-up problem.
Well,
his fingers won't set. Like, what are you doing, man?
Maybe he has no cartilage. Like they're so bent, they're just floppy.
Gross.
He's like a boneless chicken dude. Like,
yeah, that's what it is.
A boneless chicken dude.
It's literally chicken fingers with no bones.
I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not a doctor, but that doesn't sound very good.
No, it doesn't sound good. But the thing is, they had 11 offensive linemen, so they already cut offensive linemen last week.
Well, you kind of assumed they were going to have to drop 1 or 2 anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, and this is one of those look, you'll probably be back in 4 weeks, but we've already got someone playing in front of you. We're going to put you on IR.
Not if your chicken fingers won't set.
Yeah, seriously. That's a threat. Look, man, if your fingers don't set and you got chicken fingers, we're shutting you down.
Yeah, pretty much.
But at the end of it, I mean, it's Odiambo. He's in his 2nd year. He lost his starting job once they traded for Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown, by all accounts, played well in his game Sunday. But the Seahawks as a whole, they were ugly. Every offensive lineman had a penalty. It's just kind of gross.
Yeah, it was not. It was an all-around failure for everybody, wasn't it?
Well, before we lament this big loss and this big downer, let's talk about the weather. Ross, you were at the game. I was at the game. Were you prepared for snow in November?
No, man. I know you get. I know it snows in Seattle every year, but it's usually in January, February, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
Typically, if there is ever going to be snow, it's going to be super late, in January. It's pretty rare to have pre-December snow in Seattle, at least in Seattle itself.
I think I read it was the first snow in 45 years down where I was staying. So it was not really prepared for that. And I mean, it contributed probably to some pretty bad conditions. It's not just it's snowing. It's rainy, snowy, a bit windy, but really just generally wet and gross.
I tried to bundle up, but I still wasn't prepared for that kind of weather. I should have had at least another layer or 2.
I had my big Seahawk coat, so old school emblem on it. I wore that to Green Bay in 2008. So.
I'm not a fan of weather in general. It just doesn't seem like something we should have to think about. We should be able to just exist. But no.
It's 2017, damn it.
Yeah. Let's get a grip on that.
You should move to Singapore.
No weather in Singapore?
There's no you don't even bother to check. I haven't spent extensive time there, but every time I'm there, the longest I've ever spent was a week in a row there. And you don't check the weather forecast because like every day it's 90 degrees in the daytime and 85 degrees at night. Because they're right on the equator, and it never changes.
A little warm.
It's warm, but at least it doesn't change. I assume they probably have the occasional cyclone or typhoon or whatever, but other than that, there's no weather.
Typhoon over there, right?
Well, like Singapore's right on the border of the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic, and the Pacific Ocean, so I don't know which they get.
Gotcha. Anywho,
it was cold.
Our meteorology blog.
Yeah. But I think the weather it does seem to play a factor, especially in Seahawks games, based upon the offense they try to run. By the time they scored points, like the weather really got better. It stopped raining. It was not as cold. The Seahawks started clicking again. And Washington, they had the same issue. They were not very effective. If you looked at the total yardage in that game, and again, it's not a factor, but it paints at least a little bit of the picture. They scored more points, but for 59 minutes and 24 seconds, they looked pretty awful. And then the one time that they score, it was enough to get them ahead. But the same thing kind of happened with the Seahawks. They put two scoring drives together at the late end of the half, but they kind of mess up by going for two. And the first time when it was 8-10, they rightfully went for two, but they had a terrible play design. It almost cost them more points, which I haven't seen on a Seahawks led team. I was actually surprised that they stopped them. Credit Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson for being guys that will never give up on a play, but man, that was just awful.
Yeah.
It was surrealistic. It's okay. Well, he'll be down now. Well, down now. He'll be what? Why is he not down yet?
They had like four laterals on that team. I mean, credit their special teams for playing the way that they did. But yeah, that was a weird game. And then you add in the penalties. We'll probably talk about this a little bit more in topic number 2 when we talk about our mid-season grades. But the penalties in that game, I feel, were the table setter for everything. Because they had so many penalties, it just stopped all momentum. Every time they got a first down, they got pushed back. They'd get a few yards back on the next play, but then another penalty, and just they had almost 150 yards in penalties. That's almost as much as the Washington team had through the first 3 quarters of the game. That's so many mistakes. That's so much yardage just freely given up.
I think it was more than 150. I feel like it's 168 yards.
It was like 19 penalties, and there was a couple 5-yarders in there, plus some other big penalties. There were 16
penalties total for 168 yards.
That's just awful.
And it's not even just the 168 yards that you're moving back. It's also, like a long pass to Doug Baldwin was called back because of it. A decent run here and there, a couple other medium length passes, another deep pass. Probably 150 yards like the other way. So it's like a 300-yard swing.
Yeah, and not only that, but it took off first down. So instead of it being
exactly.
second and short, it's now first and long. And then instead of getting, second and manageable, it goes back to second and longer, which was...
I think I read that they had 13 plays where the distance to gain was longer than 10 yards.
Yep.
That's just too much.
Yeah, I mean, you're just putting yourself in a hole, and we're not designed to play like that anyway. And then, some of them were just ridiculous, like Jimmy Graham, a false start. You're a tight end, man. You don't move till the ball moves. That's when you move. If the ball hasn't moved yet, you don't move.
Yeah.
It's easy.
And what's funny, so we talked about this last week. We talked about it in our topic of the trap game. You guys said you don't believe in the trap game. I said I do, but I thought that the Seahawks would be more disciplined. They'd be better restraint in a game that, they on paper they should have won. Credit Washington for playing a game that allowed them to stay in it. They definitely didn't have a great game plan until they scored on that final drive, but credit them. They kept our defense in check. We kept our own offense in check by our mistakes. And it's the perfect letdown game. There are so many things that you could change one thing, and the Seahawks win.
I don't see it as a trap game. Even now, I don't think it was a trap game. I think like they messed up, and I don't think it was because they were like letting down. I don't think it was because of anything like that. I think there was a lot of things going on with that game.
But I don't think it was a trap game either. I feel like, other than the fact that I believed we'd pull it out and win at the end, this game went exactly how I thought it would be. I thought it would be sloppy. I thought it would be defensive. I thought it would be low scoring. I have faith in our team to pull it out in the end, which I expected them to do, and they didn't. But other than that, it went almost. I wasn't even nervous because that's exactly how I expected it to go.
Yeah,
I get that. I was kind of similar.
I get what you're saying, because for the first 58 minutes and 30 seconds, that's what it was, because the Seahawks just marched down the field and scored, to take the go-ahead score, and then all of a sudden in that 30 seconds passing next, Washington just moved the ball and it just went to shit. So I get what your guys are saying, but I still think that the lack of discipline, the lack of execution, that sloppiness, yeah, that's part of who the Seahawks are, especially this year, but that seemed way worse in this game than all previous games before it.
Right, but I mean that doesn't mean it was like a trap game. It wasn't like they went in and it was because they weren't taking it seriously or because they were underestimating their opponent. I mean, it was a combination of like a few weird things. I mean, penalties have always been a problem, and it's always probably going to be a problem because that's not Pete Carroll's strong suit. It's hard to tell like a team like be yourself, play loose, and do this and do that, and just be yourself and get every edge possible, but then also try to be a disciplinarian. I mean, it's not going to really happen. I think he's going to have to find a way to tighten up some things. I mean, get like an assistant head coach who is that type, because the pre-snap penalties, the right tackles pre-snap penalties, I get. But everybody else's pre-snap penalties, like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, like, how do you not get set on offense? Like, how are you still in motion before the snap, going towards the line of scrimmage?
Okay, the right tackle's cheating. He knows. Fetty knows he's not nimble enough, so he's cheating. And most of the time he gets away. I mean, he got called for 2 false starts. He probably would have been called for 5 if you watch it. I mean, he moves because he knows he can't get to the outside fast enough. So I'm pretty sure like they're coaching him to do that the way if you watch him. So I get his, okay? Like, that's just, we don't have a good right tackle, so you have to plug somebody else in. And so you have to kind of cut the corners a little bit and give him a little bit of a technique and coach him up to, what the signal is. So if you move a half a second before the hike of the ball, probably they're not going to notice it, so do that.
All right, well, let's talk about this, because this actually leads us into topic number 1. And Zeb, I'll let you go first with this. Do the Seahawks always get the opponent's best game? That's kind of where we're at right now. Are we getting what opponents try to play up to our level, with Seahawks being such a big player? Zeb, what do you think?
I like to think that, and I've kind of, especially since we've been, consistently competitive, that's kind of something that I've thought. But I also feel like that might be a little bit homerish to believe that. Maybe like in 2013 and 2014 when the Seahawks were such a legitimate Super Bowl contender, maybe at that point, but I don't know about now. I don't know if that's necessarily something that's realistic for every game. But then there is also that we do have still kind of that swagger, especially on defense. But everybody knows, Richard Sherman likes to talk, and I think that kind of thing will definitely get the other team fired up, maybe a little bit more, regardless of what the circumstances in the actual season are. You know what I mean? So I guess there is the potential there that happens, especially when you're talking about personalities. But I don't think we get every opponent's best effort because we're the Seahawks. I don't think that's necessarily how it is.
Ross, what about you? What do you think that it's a big game to play the Seahawks still?
Probably not, but I don't think it's like, oh, we're playing the Seahawks, whatever. I think we sometimes get the best of the offense because I think the defense is still really good and still a little bit unorthodox. So I think maybe they have to actually put a little bit more kind of conscious thought into how they're planning their offense. But I mean, I don't see that. I mean, like it wasn't like did Washington play their best game? I don't think so. They played their best 90 seconds until that point. I mean, they got 6 sacks. They gave up 6 sacks on offense. They were completely contained. They had no, they had nothing going on all game long, really. So, I mean, if that's their best game, I think they're in serious trouble because they had a best 90. Like I said, they had a best 90 seconds. Other than that, they scored 10 points all game. If that's your best. Green Bay scored 17 as well, wasn't it?
Yep.
That was with Aaron Rodgers in there. If that's your best game, well, you're not that scary of a boogeyman anymore in the NFC North. So I don't know if we're getting their best game. I just think I don't know, man. I look at the exact opposite. I think almost all these losses we just didn't come to play. Like the talent wise on the roster, we're better. So if we're not winning, there's 1-2 areas that you can really blame it to my eyes.
Yeah,
and it's not them playing their best game.
Well, that will be like topic 2. I do think that Seahawks as a team get opposing players' best games, and the reason for that is even though teams might not think about it, Seattle is one of the more consistent and more recognized teams in the NFC, especially when it comes to the fact that they've been in the playoffs every year for the past 5 years going. They've made it to the second round. They've won a Super Bowl. They are Super Bowl champions. That still does draw attention, as opposed to when you play other teams that don't have that kind of pedigree, especially in the past years. With that in mind, that's kind of also why I think we fall into those trap games, because I think Seahawks do fall into this idea that, we could just play our game and we're going to score 2 touchdowns after doing nothing for the first 50 minutes, and it'll be gravy, and we'll walk off the field because we're playing at home and we're the better team on paper and we got better players.
Do you actually think they're thinking that? Do you actually think they're going with a plan? Like
no, but that's the point. It's not necessarily always a conscious thing. It's maybe sometimes subconscious, and that's how it plays out. It's the same idea that if you think you're the best and and that helps you perform well, that's what gets people going. Richard Sherman always talks about people downplaying them as a team. He likes to play with a chip on the shoulder. Russell Wilson's always about that positive attitude. People, even without saying it, fall into those kind of categories, and that's why I think Seattle welcomes and brings that out of the opponents, because I bet you throughout that game, Seattle defense players were probably trash-talking all game long, and, they were still in it. Seattle didn't blow anybody out, so if it's a close game and you're not leading until the last 6 minutes of the game, and actually not until the last 2 minutes of the game, you think you're in it, so you play well. So other teams, they're kept in the game. And this maybe goes into philosophy, because Seattle doesn't score a lot at the beginning of the game. Teams feel like, hey, we can win this game. We're still in it. No one's like hanging their head low because they're down 25 points to the Seahawks, and that's insurmountable. It's a 1-score game throughout the entire series, and that's something that a lot of teams can come back into.
I guess. I mean, I see what you're saying. I guess it's a matter of semantics. I don't think we're necessarily getting anybody's best game. I think we're not playing. We
got their best 30 seconds for sure.
Definitely. I think. I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about other things later on, maybe, but I just think that there needs to be a bit of a philosophical shakeup.
Well, Ross, you played us a clip before we started. Why don't you talk about that real quick? It was the offensive coordinator for Washington.
Offensive coordinator of Washington talking to Kirk Cousins, telling him, "Hey, Seahawks are out there playing man coverage on most plays, which is more than we normally do when they're needing to go downfield." And he said, "Hey, don't throw the ball in the area of Richard Sherman because that guy's going to make a play on the ball, and don't throw the ball in the area of Cam Chancellor because he'll make a play on the ball. But do throw in the area of the backup safety, throw in the area of Coleman, throw in the area of Griffin. And he's right. I mean, we've talked like Coleman is better than expected so far, and we've talked Griffin's probably played pretty well, played Jeremy Lane out of a job. But Griffin's been targeted quite a bit because they don't target Sherman. He's come away with exactly 0 interceptions, right? And we're not making people pay. He's good. He's pretty good. But we might be overrating him a bit. He hasn't, no interceptions at all, even though he's getting targeted a lot.
Right.
He's not playing the ball.
Yeah.
And they targeted. They said those guys got their back. And Kirk Cousins, like we talked about last week, he's not the best ever, but he is a franchise quarterback. He's like the minimum you can be to be a franchise quarterback, and he knows how. So that means he can throw the ball where he wants to throw the ball. The defenders are going back. They've turned their back on Kirk Cousins. They don't have help over top. They, the last play, not the last play of the game, but the last play, the long pass to
the 6-yard line, and then they slid 5 yards down to the 1.
That play, they ran against Griffin, and Griffin didn't make contact at the line, didn't misdirect him, didn't disrupt the timing, didn't change the direction of where he was going, literally did nothing, didn't do the kick step to start the coverage, did nothing to stop it. So that becomes just purely a timing play that they've probably done in practice all week long. I throw it with this amount of energy, and that where the ball's going to be, and you get there. He had to dive for it, made a good catch. I thought on replay the nose of the ball hit the ground, but still, it was right there. Griffin did nothing. And there was no safety over top, and the coverage they were playing didn't put a safety over top. And he should have never let the guy get on top. I mean, if the guy gets by you and it's that situation of the game, it's situational awareness, tackle the guy.
Yeah.
Tackle him. To be at the 20-yard line, tackle the guy, fine.
Yeah. Now, I agree with you 100%. I do think that those were big plays by the Washington quarterback and receiver. Those were not like gimme catches and gimme throws. They're professionals, so they're expected to make those catches and expected to make those throws. And it sucks that it happens to us. Because, like you said, it seems so preventable. You play cover one, you keep that one safety up top, you let McDougal, kind of roam around. You should have a good matchup, KJ or Bobby can cover the tight end. You don't have to have Cam just, exclusively cover the tight end. There's so many things about that game, which is what makes it so frustrating. It's so easy to point out to just one thing here or one thing there, and that's an easy Seahawks win, right?
Yep. I mean, that's... Yeah, it's just exhausting to think of all the chances. I don't want to take anything away from Washington. They played a good game. They played as well as they could. I mean, they were missing 3 of the normal offensive linemen, 4 if you include who they actually thought were going to be the stars at the beginning of the season. They're missing their Pro Bowl tight end, and they still got it done. So
they did what they had to do.
They did, and we didn't. And it really hurts, right? Because everybody else in the NFC, all the other front runners won their games.
Yep.
Philadelphia, the Rams, New Orleans, everybody else won their games.
That is so trash. Was that Russell Wilson false start in this game or the game against the Texans where he bobbed his head and they called false start on him?
I want to say that was the Texans game.
Well, I think it was the Texans game.
Okay. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean Russ did that doesn't mean game. I mean, he missed some passes again and
well, it was a horseshit penalty anyway, but...
Yes, it is. It was.
Yeah.
And I felt like they were being... I don't know. The refs were being a little bit nitpicky towards us this weekend.
There are definitely a lot of holds on the Seahawks comparative to the other team. I think it was
felt like that a couple years ago when where there was evidence that the Seahawks were being called tighter than the other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept watching this game over and over and over again, and I'm we're going to talk about it later, but it's all coaching, man. You have Russell Wilson back there. He's your quarterback. He's going to scramble because offensive line sucks. And so when he scrambles, the offensive line has to sort of adjust, right? The defensive players are now going to kind of head in a different direction, and their instinct is to kind of want to grab. and that's where you're going to come up with more and more holding penalties. But that's coachable. Like they.
All right, well let's talk about that because we want to keep Professor Ross on fire here. So we're going to talk about some mid-season grades. Ross, we're going to let you lead this, and you can pick of the four which one you want to grade first: offense,
Grade the
defense,
coaches.
coaching, or the overall. So, all right, let's talk about the coaches. What's your grade on the coaches?
A D minus.
5 and 3, and they get a D minus.
Yeah. Because we should be 7 and 1. Like at the beginning of the season, I thought like 6 and 2 at this point. We're one worse than that. But how they actually played, I'm like, wow, we easily could be. I didn't know whether they were going to add in, Freeney 3 sacks in 2 games.
Yep.
You added Sheldon Richardson just before the season starts. You added Dwight Freeney, Hall of Famer, dude. You added Dwayne Brown now, at least for a game, and you lose that one. I mean, like, you add on 2 Pro Bowl players the last 2 games, and you lose one of them, and you almost lose the other. Come on, man. I mean, it's the coaching. The coaching allows 16 sacks. That's been a perennial problem since 2012, and they've done nothing to fix it. Nothing at all. It has not been fixed, and this week they're not going to do anything again. There's a right tackle there who, holds twice a game like clockwork, who false starts twice a game like clockwork, and you're going to let him play again. And he's going to do it tomorrow again. He's going to have at least 2 holds. He's going to have at least 2 false starts, probably more because we're playing in an away game, although there's not a lot of noise in Arizona. But come on. I mean, and then again, like we just talked about, that's coaching. Like, you need to coach the offensive linemen how to recognize when the defensive line switches are when they switch how they're rushing, what type of switch means it's probably because our quarterback is just taken off, as opposed to, okay, probably the ball's been thrown. I mean, that's 2 different types of ways the defense is going to react. That's coachable.
Russ had a penalty like that.
Problem.
Russ created a penalty by throwing the ball. Do you remember that? He ran out of the pocket, ran to the sideline, and then he threw the ball, and then Luke Wilson saw him, so he engaged with the blocker.
Oh, that's right.
And it turned into a running play, but then because Wilson threw the ball, it ended up being downfield.
That one doesn't drive me crazy. That's not like an offensive lineman behind the line of scrimmage, not even after we've had Russell Wilson here for 6 years, not understanding the guy switching because Russell Wilson's probably scrambling still.
All right.
I mean, that's like a kind of a fluke kind of feeling. Like, he sees Russell take off, so he's going to block for him. Then Russell decides to throw the ball after, Luke has turned around. Okay, that's in Japanese we say shogunai. I mean, it's just can't be helped. That's going to happen every once in a while. I don't mind that one.
Okay.
But it's coaching. Coaching's a D. Coaching. We didn't score on offense for 3 quarters again this game. So how many games out of the last 20 again we did not score in the first half or didn't score in the first 3 quarters?
I think that Houston's the only
game. You can't run your offense that way. Sorry?
Houston's the only game where they scored in the first quarter. A touchdown.
I mean, we scored, yeah. I mean,
that feels
we scored
like
this
it.
game in the first quarter. We scored on defense.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
All right, Zeb, what about you? What's your coaching grade?
I mean, I agree with Ross. I'm willing to give them a C because we have won 5 games, and the players aren't doing that all on their own. Obviously, the coaching is doing something, but yeah, I'm not satisfied. I don't think that they're doing a good a job as they should be, for pretty much most of the same reasons Ross mentioned.
I think there definitely is an element of grading on a curve, especially with the expectations of the team. When you look at the schedule to start the year, it looks like a really daunting schedule, especially this last game. It's a home game. 6 and 2 and 5 and 3. They're so different from each other that I think you guys are both right that they don't get a great grade. I'm probably with Zeb. I'd give them a C. Winning 5 of your first 8, that's a 10-6 record if you keep that same pace. It's a playoff team. It's not a top seed. Ross, we were chatting back and forth about, thinking about the 1 seed, and it does come into play because every team in front of you won. You're now, not only are you a game behind the division, you're 2 games behind the NFC leader, and you're lucky you get to play them this year, but it might not be enough, especially because 4 wins is the most, or the 4 losses is the most that you can have. So you got to really run the table in these final 8 games. So I'm with you guys. I think you have to give coaching a low score based upon what you would expect them. So let's jump this back into the offense.
I don't think there's any doubt at all.
Ross, how would you grade the offense? Because it comes into expectations and comes into play with the coaching, right?
Given the talent, C minus. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm going to say we have a C minus offense right now. It can come alive. We can come alive. It potentially could. We saw that Texas game. I think we all sort of thought we had turned some sort of corner there. But the fact is, our leading rusher is somebody who hasn't played in the game for a month.
Yep.
And he's still the leading rusher.
Still the leading rusher, Chris Carson. He might come back week 15. He might come back week 15 and really pad that lead.
Yeah, the last 2 games at least, Russell Wilson's the leading rusher, and they can't get 3 yards a carry generally, and like the minimum is supposed to be 3.5, 4, right? So you're a C minus offense. Luke Wilson has like 9 catches. Like Luke Wilson is not Jimmy Graham, obviously, but that's a weapon. He's really he's as fast as a wide receiver. Essentially, he's a tall, lanky wide receiver. Yeah. So where are his catches? Tyler Lockett. We all love Tyler Lockett. That guy's such an awesome kid, but like he needed to take a red shirt this year or something because he's not right. He's not right at all. He's had a couple of good plays, but what's the point of having him on returns right now? We don't get anything out of it. I'd rather have Kissick back on returns right now. And he makes a few catches, but he's not right now, obviously. I'd rather have some more plays go to Tanner, maybe even.
No.
I don't.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Steve Largent's kid?
Don't give me Tanner McAvoy after saying that Tyler Lockett's not doing enough.
All Tanner does is make big plays, man. Whether it's for us or the other team.
Oh, for the other team. That's all he does.
No, dude. He had a 53-yard get. No, that guy's on.
Yeah, and Tyler Lockett had twice as many yards in that same game. All right, Zeb. But what about you? What are you grading the offense, Zeb?
I'm on a C minus as well. The lack, and this does also fall into coaching, I think, to some extent. The lack of the running game. Which I think the lack of commitment to the run is a big part of that problem. And then just the inability to score points. Like we get down in the red zone and we blow it, or we get held to a field goal and we're lucky to get a field goal these days. It's not good enough. There's been some good stuff. There's been some games where it was better than others, but it's just not good enough. Tyler Lockett, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with Ross necessarily that there's something wrong with him. He looks about the same to me. At kick and punt returns, he seems to lack a little bit of vision more than anything else. He looks like he's running just fine. So I don't know if it's he might be a half step slower. It's hard to say. But as a wide receiver, he looks the same to me. He's always been. I mean, they're obviously Russell doesn't like him because he's trying to get him killed out there every time. I don't know. Everybody looks about the same. Obviously, Jimmy's drops have been a little bit of an issue this season. That's not something we would expect out of him.
Do you think Luke Wilson is a little bit more of a treating him as? I mean,
is he what?
A couple years ago, he's a bit more of a potential weapon than they're using him for. I mean, like, do you remember the game a couple of years ago where he had 112 yards receiving against Arizona on 3 catches? That guy, like, he still has that speed. He's still that guy.
I think
run him down there, man.
I think yes, I agree, but I don't think it's Luke Wilson. I think it's just our lack of being able to use a tight end consistently well.
Also, even with Jimmy, it's hard to sell. Luke Wilson is going to be there to run block, and Jimmy Graham's going to be there to run block. You know they're going to be catching passes. So
Luke Wilson's a good blocker now. This isn't Luke Wilson 13. He can block. He can. Look at his grades, man. Watch the game. Watch.
I don't.
I think he can block.
When they're gonna run the game, when they're gonna run now, they actually bring him in. Like he essentially sort of starts over Jimmy Graham, depending on the play call now. They actually they've shifted. Like Jimmy Graham is now a receiver.
Yeah, but again, it's telegraphing what you're doing. So
no, because Luke Wilson can do both.
He can't do both.
He can catch. Luke Wilson's actually, ironically, because Luke was kind of college, he was like a wide receiver in a tight end's body, but he's probably our best overall, like, well-rounded tight end now, and they don't use him.
They don't seem to be able to utilize tight end position that well, and it's funny because that's the Seahawks forever, right? Like,
it's like a tradition.
It's just for some reason we just never seem to be able to utilize that position consistently as far as in the offense.
Yeah, Pro Bowl tight ends like come to Seattle to be forgotten.
Yeah.
Like Zach Miller, like he was a Pro Bowl receiver in Oakland. He was like a receiving tight end.
But he was also a really good pass blocker and a run blocker, and that's what he really excelled in.
When he came to Seattle, that's all he did.
But he excelled at it. That's what Seattle needed, because he went from John Carlson that couldn't catch in his third year, and then he couldn't run block and pass block, and he was basically just shipped over to wherever he ended up.
Your arch nemesis.
Yeah. I'm with you guys. I'm actually giving them a harsher grade. I'm going to give the Seahawks offense a D. They're just maddening inconsistent. Like, I equate it to a kid that's cramming for the last minute just to get a passable grade. They're not trying to get good grades. They're just saying, like, what is going to get me to the next class? What's going to get me to the next game? They're just trying to get enough. They don't care to.
Well, I think that's what they're going to have to be this season. I don't think they're going to have time to form that like an identity or whatever.
No, and I think that's the problem. You know, they have bad parents. They're letting them stay up way too late, playing too many video games, drinking too much Mountain Dew. That's who this Seahawks student is in the offense. All right, let's go to defense. Ross, how would you grade the defense?
B+. Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with a B. They mostly shed people. One really bad Texans, but I think we all agree that's an explosive offense, and that'll happen.
Yep.
Time. But they kept Aaron Rodgers under control. Washington they had under control really. Before the Texans game, they had pulled themselves all the way back up into tied for number one in scoring defense. So and that's what matters. I don't care how many yards people get on us. A couple letdowns, that last game, it's a B+. Couple lapses and a couple philosophy questions, I think. But they've also made some amazing things. I mean, deciding to bring in Freeney and getting 3 sacks out of him, exactly, knowing exactly when to play him and letting him do his thing and keeping the chemistry still there. And Frank Clark's come along and developing. Like, I just kind of got on Griffin's case a little bit, but it's tough as a rookie playing across from Richard Sherman because, everything's going to. I didn't play the clip earlier when I showed the other one, but there was another clip where after the game, Cousins and Richard Sherman met up on the field, and Kirk Cousins said to him, like, dude, there was no way we were going to challenge you. He just said it straight out to him. So
he's doing what Aaron Rodgers hesitantly does then.
Yeah, I mean, like, Aaron Rodgers, I think it's funny because I think it bruises Aaron Rodgers after a bit. And not in a bad way. I don't like Aaron Rodgers, but this part I don't really begrudge him. I think it's kind of like the warrior instinct. Like, you think you're the best at what you do, and you know that guy's one of the best at what he is, so you kind of want to go one-on-one against him. But then you realize you're in a team sport, and you got to do what's best for the team, and that's not going against Richard Sherman. It's going against Griffin and Coleman. So that's the smart play. But it kind of grinds on him. You can see it pretty obviously, can't you?
All right, Zeb, how you grading the defense halfway through the year?
I'll give them a B. I think they're playing good for the most part, but there's some inconsistencies there that I don't like. And it's funny. Like, I think of our last couple of episodes, and after the Giants game, we were just praising the defense, how they were, you know what I mean? They were like, they were at the top of their game, and we're talking Hall of Fame, and we're talking about greatest defenses of all time, and then they come out against the Texans and just kind of get sliced and diced. And then after the Texans game, we were talking Russell Wilson and how he's, future Hall of Famer, and we're so happy to have him. And then he comes out against the Redskins and kind of lays a bit of an egg. Maybe it's our fault. You think it's our fault?
We hyped him too much.
I think. See, it's like every game, my opinion changes just a little bit. I do believe we still have a top-notch defense, one of the best defenses in the league. But it's obviously certain things are problematic. We can't be giving up, those kind of game-winning scores. That's not good enough, especially at home, especially in the bad weather. If we could stop that type of stuff from happening, it'd be an A. But it didn't happen, so it's a B for me.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a B plus because they have kept us in so many games. They've made it possible so that we're within one score of every single one of our losses. That's a huge component, especially with this offense being a D to me. They have to carry. Yeah, they had a bad game against Houston where they were just super dynamic and, Houston, credit to them, put up a ton of points. Offense bailed them out. That happened once this year. Every other game it's been a low-scoring affair. The Seahawks defense is giving up 17 points or less per game on average now. That should be good enough to win you most of your games. Your offense should be able to score 20 points easily with the personnel that they have. I'm giving them an A. Yeah. All right. Overall scores. We'll wrap this up real quick. Ross, what's your overall score? Ross? We lose Ross?
Sorry, can you...
What's the overall score you're giving for the Seahawks so far?
The overall score?
Yeah, what's their grade?
Grade.
Sorry.
Overall for the Seahawks, B minus.
Zeb?
I'm going to say C plus, because I think they potentially could be so much better. But C plus, it could be a 79 if Ross is giving them an 81. You know what I mean?
It's just that one extra punctuation mark on the spelling correction just dropped him down. I'm going to give him a C, solid 75-ish for their score. They can't overcome their offense. Their defense can't bail them out all the time, or their coaching's not helping them out enough. So they're just skating by. They're really ramping up because they know the final is worth twice as much as the midterm. So this is kind of who the Seahawks are.
You are what your record says you are.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go to topic number 3. So the topic number 3 for the Homer Corner is, and this is a little complex one, so my apologies in advance. So Madden gamers study how to manage the clock and the score. Is there any value in NFL teams adopting these kinds of philosophies? And what it is, so it was pointed out that had Doug Baldwin taken a knee at the 1-yard line instead of crossing the goal, he could have just, instead of passing the goal line, he would have just taken a knee at the 1. Seahawks were only down 2, so they could have kicked a gimme field goal. With a minute 50-ish on the clock, if Seattle takes 2 knees and forces Washington to burn their timeouts, it's a minute 30 seconds and Washington has no time left. If Washington chooses not to take a knee, or actually no, because Washington only had 2 timeouts, it's 6 seconds for 2 knees and then another 40 seconds. So with a minute 50-ish left, it would have taken off, nearly a minute 10, giving Washington less than 40 seconds with no timeouts to try and get a field goal. So that's kind of what this idea is about, and that's what a lot of Madden players do, especially ones that play online or competitively. Zeb, do you think there's any value in NFL teams kind of adopting this game style mechanic? Because it's not about playing the game right, it's about, what helps me win? Punting on 4th down doesn't work, so I'm always going to go for it on 4th down, or always going for 2-point plays. What do you think about this and how this applies to NFL teams and NFL games?
Well, as far as the clock thing goes, I kind of just thought that's already the way things were. Now, obviously, you want to score. Most 99 times out of 100, if you have the chance to score, you're going to take that chance. But we've seen over the years, here and there, a player go down because they know they understand the clock management and that sort of thing. I don't see time. Clock management has never, I don't think, has been one of Pete Carroll's strongest suits, right, in the league. We've had some issues there over the years. I don't see a situation where Doug Baldwin goes down during that play and doesn't score that touchdown. I don't think so. When you're talking that specifically, I think in a video game that makes a lot of sense. But in the real world, you got to get those points. That's the most important thing. So, I don't know. I don't see anybody in the NFL taking a whole lot of things from a way the video game is played. I just don't think that's a very realistic situation.
Ross, what about you?
It's funny because you compare it to well, not compare, but you're talking about it in sort of, it's just sort of math. The punt thing has been kind of discussed for a few years, and I think there's a high school coach out there, maybe in Oregon or somewhere, that never ever does punt because he's done the math on it. But the math of it, it's not that simple because the math on it has all been done with equations of punt. So it's kind of weird. I mean, I understand that Madden really helps people understand the game better. I think people who are really, really casual fans now get the intricacies of it. But I also think sometimes they start to think they know more than they really do think, and they're also not realistic about what it feels like when you're actually on a football field. Zeb mentioned, we're talking about, should Doug Baldwin have just taken a knee? We have seen players take a knee at the goal line or at the one or whatever, but it's usually a little bit different situation where it's a little bit more obvious that that's the play to make, because that way it can kind of be stuck in your head. If you already have the lead and you're winning by one, and your guy gets the ball and he takes it down to the one, and if you score, that means they're going to get the ball back. Yeah, you see it in that case. But it's really, really hard when you're losing. Especially Doug Baldwin, we missed 3 field goals. Field goals aren't automatic.
Clearly not.
Clearly,
we missed 3. You can't assume that. That's the difference between a video game where if you lose, you lost a video game, as opposed to real life. If you lose that game, you lost 1/16 of your season, and you only get. So it's a little different situation, isn't it?
So
when it's theory versus reality.
I think this is a really interesting case study because I think, one, it speaks to what you're more familiar with, and this is me mostly talking about myself. What you're familiar with. Are you familiar with how games are played and what the competitive scene is like? I don't play competitively, but I watch people play, and I have an idea of what that's like. But there's a lot to be said about understanding these concepts. Kind of like you said, there's a coach out there that does it, but they don't do it at the NFL level. So there's fear of our season is too valuable. Doesn't matter what prize you're playing for, whether it's just a win-loss or if there's money involved and it's a tournament, you still get to keep playing at the end of it. If you make this mistake in a real game, it's end of the world. But I also think it's kind of the same idea that, hey, if I take a risk on a 5'10" and 3/4 inch quarterback, I can think outside the box. I can try something new because I'm confident in what this represents and what it means. So I do think that there is value, and it wouldn't be an issue of oh yeah, this person is on the field talking to the coach's ear. It's more of hey, I'm going to tell you about all these situations, and here's the math behind it, just as you said, Ross. If you do this, if you go for 2 in these situations, if you manage the clock in this way, these are things that you should do. It happens all the time where someone's trying to, drive down the field, and instead of, taking throwing the ball out of bounds, they get a 2-yard completion, but it wastes 15 seconds for the formation to set up again. Everyone says, don't catch the ball, let's drop it. The incomplete is more, and the time is more valuable than the 2 extra yards that you're getting when you're trying to drive down the field. I believe these philosophies add value to what the NFL teams are trying to do. Doesn't mean that they change the game and all of a sudden it's a different style, but there are things that I don't think that they are realizing they could take advantage of, and they choose not to.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I think I talked about last week, scene in Moneyball where Jonah Hill's character takes him outside and says, like, look, baseball's thinking is archaic. There's so much about football that people are thinking as well, as just archaic thinking about. See, I don't necessarily agree that punting is always bad, but like, you know, 20-yard line, go ahead and punt. But if you're anywhere between your 40 and their 40, overall the math says do it. And then, you know, you should be going for 2-yard, 2-point conversions more often. The math says you should be doing that. There's all kinds of things. You know, like listening, like lately, 7:10 a.m. morning show in Seattle, Mike Salk's big thing is the timeouts. Like, coaches massively undervalue their timeouts. Like, they'll use them in the first quarter to save 5 yards on first down from the 35 when that timeout's going to be worth much, much more potentially in the second quarter towards half. Take the 5-yard loss on 1st and 10, make it 1st and 15. That's not that big a deal.
Right, because it's so funny how often teams are really like, well, I'm going to spike the ball and stop the clock, and you just lost it down. But that's more valuable.
And that's I mean, as I was going to mention earlier, when you talked about you want to, you know, switch the game out, but part of it's also the culture you live in. Like, you know, Belichick is super, super, super respected, as well as should be. But even he still gets flack years later for actually going for it on 4th down from his 35 in a game once. People like you live inside the culture of football, and if it doesn't happen to work, you're going to take 10 times as much heat if you don't follow orthodox.
Right.
And I think I think that's the fear. That's the fear that people are doing as opposed to taking that risk because games are too valuable. There's too much involved, and people aren't willing to risk that.
I mean, it's your career. Like, how often do their careers?
Yeah.
If you become known as that offensive coordinator who's just too kooky and wild, and if it didn't, you know, if you just were unlucky and out, you're going to need to get another job. But if you're seen as a guy who's just too kooky, you're not going to get another job.
If you had one word to describe Darrell Bevell in his offensive play calling, what's the word you would use?
Infuriating.
Zed? What word would you use?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't get infuriated with him, but I guess he confuses me sometimes. Confusing.
I would use the word cute. He tries to get cute with his play calling.
See, I also feel like it's hard because if he does get cute, that means essentially we think he's doing something too far out of the side of the box. But if he didn't, then you say he's too conservative. I mean, it's kind of based on the results.
It's almost always based on the results, for sure.
Like, for me, it's just I think he's a really, really good person to create a playbook and to create a conception, to conceptualize an offense. Not as much now, where we spend a few more dollars on offense, but a few years ago, people were complaining about him. 2013, blah blah blah, 2014. I'm like, that guy's got like a 3rd-round quarterback, a free agent running back, a street tight end, a street off the street fullback, and 4 free agent or undrafted free agent wide receivers. Tell me another offensive coordinator who'd get production out.
Yeah, but the other crazy thing is, depending on what offensive metric, but based on the offensive metric you're looking at, yardage-wise, they're one of the top teams in the league. They just don't have the points to back it up. So
he doesn't know how to call. This is why it's infuriating. He doesn't know how to call anything in the red zone. He doesn't. I like his when he gets cute. I like that because it's 3rd and 2, and he's like, why aren't you just getting the 2? And he likes to throw long on 3rd and 2, and I love that.
Yeah.
But once he's not even the proper red zone, when he's in the long red zone, not even. It's the deeper 15 yards and in. He doesn't know how to call play.
Yeah, they get it's too tight. It's too tight for them and what they want to do.
That's why I couldn't understand. They could have. They had a chance at the last thing.
Going for 2, they tried that wide receiver pick play and it got almost returned for 2 points. All right, let's go to topic number 4. Topic number 4. This one's for Ross. Are the Cardinals a real rival, or do you just hate Bruce Arians?
I'm going first?
Yep.
Bruce Arians sucks, man. That guy, I hate that guy. And they're not a real rival. I haven't been for a couple of years because they're not good enough to be a rival. Like there has to be some threat there. They're annoying. Like we're really, really good in prime time. Since Pete Carroll's taken over, it's been only three losses and one tie. All the rest are wins. But of those four, like two of them are against the Cardinals.
Yep.
They're really annoying. Like the Rams are really annoying. This year, the Rams are probably growing into a proper rival. But the Cardinals are never they weren't ever really. They Bruce Arians is just like such the anti Pete Carroll. And I guess that just really, really grates on me. He's not a very nice person. And I hate to say that because I know somebody who knows him quite well personally. I know the guy who works in security, VIP security at the Cardinals facility and stadium. And he's also security guard, kind of in security during training camp and everything. And so he's met him quite a few times, and he says he's really, really nice to the employees. Really, really good guy, really legit, respectful and everything. Doesn't have like an attitude. But man, every time he's like on TV, every time I hear anything, see anything reported on him, anytime I see anything on the media about him, it's just him being a jerk. And I guess it also grates him that he got Coach of the Year, like when he didn't deserve it.
Twice. Him and Ron Rivera, 2-time NFL Coaches of the Year.
I don't get it. I want everything to be based on math. I want an objective reality and to people see things more clearly. Because that guy sucks and he's a jerk. And he needs to retire for his health reasons, apparently, and he doesn't even want to admit that. Because I'm going to feel really bad because we're going to speak really, really bad about him all along. And then, potentially next week he's going to have, a heart attack. And we're going to be
yeah.
Sorry.
That's not good. Zeb, what about you? Do you think the Cardinals are a rival, or is it just a Bruce Arians thing?
I don't think it's a Bruce Arians thing necessarily. I mean, yeah, we all hate him, but he'll never be Harbaugh. You know what I mean? And the Cardinals could be a real rival without him. They were good enough.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. But the weird thing about Harbaugh is, now that Harbaugh's not coaching San Francisco, I don't mind that dude.
Well, right, exactly. But when he was the coach of the 49ers in 2012 and 2013, he was the worst. He was the devil.
But I feel like if Bruce Arians suddenly retired, but got really healthy and decided to come back and started coaching the Lions, I think I'd still hate him.
Yeah, I wouldn't like him. My thing is with the Cardinals, if they were good for an extended period of time, while we were good as well, and if they had a louder, more passionate fan base, I think they could be a real rival. But how many Cardinals fans do you know?
11. I mean, I've seen 11, not I know it.
in real life, right?
I went to our game there years ago, one where Wilson had the 112 yards receiving. I went to that game, and there was 11 Cardinal fans there.
Yeah, I know 49ers fans, I know Raiders fans, I know Steelers fans, I know Cowboys fans, I know Patriots fans. I don't know any Cardinals fans. I've never met a person that's oh, I'm a Cardinals fan.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's from Phoenix, and nobody lives there full time. So it's hard.
But I think if they were good enough. now we're talking shit because they come out and mollywop us on Thursday, and then clearly they're good enough. But I think that's what.
Quarterback a pitcher actually.
What was that?
Isn't their quarterback actually a pitcher?
Who's their quarterback? John Rocker?
No, Drew Stanton. Drew
Stanton.
Stanton, 0-2 against the Seahawks.
Somebody named Darvish.
I'm pretty sure he's a pitcher.
He might be a backup.
He might be a pitcher.
He's also a pitcher.
He was basically a pitcher, and then it didn't work out. I guess I'll play football because somebody let me back to hold a clipboard, so I guess I'll do that. But I'm pretty sure
no, you're thinking about the Michigan quarterback that started in front of Tom Brady. That's a different Drew, but
Drew Stanton played baseball for sure.
I think he thinks of himself as a baseball player. I'm looking it up right now.
He's played in the NFL for a long time, so this must have been a long time ago. But yeah, you guys are both right. The Cardinals, they're not a real rival just because they haven't been good enough for an extended period of time. Now, they have beaten the Seahawks more so than any other team in the NFC West, which is, obviously irritating. but it's usually as a spoiler. You know, the one year that
I
they
think
won.
that's a perfect example of getting. That's the team that gives us their best game every time. I do believe that.
Yeah.
Like Jeff Fisher and the Rams,
Yeah, but the thing about the Seahawks and the Cardinals is that the Cardinals, when they're down, they're just really down. Like they have such inconsistent and terrible teams. Even through most of Bruce Arians' tenure, you know, they've won the division once and they've made the wild card once, but they made the wild card. They lost their last 6 games in a row and just kind of backed into it. So they're just not a real threat, and they're not a consistent enough threat to be a rival. There has to be that kind of feel like, oh, this game's a toss-up, whether it's home or away, and that's just not who they are. Bruce Arians, I actually don't mind Harbaugh. I never liked him, but definitely when he left San Francisco, I was even more indifferent. Bruce Arians, if he never coached the Cardinals, I'd still think he was a dick. There's just something about him. The way he talks about his players, the way he talks about his team, it's all like this fake macho hubris to me. It's all a show. And I'm sure he's a nice guy, but what he shows to the media and what he talks to his players, it seems really fake to me. Nothing about him seems genuine, which is why I think he's just kind of a dick. So if he never was in the NFL again for whatever reason, I could care less. Harbaugh, I respected him a lot based upon what he did with that Niners team, because they were garbage for so long with all those coaches before him. He made them really respectable. The Niners messed up by letting him go. Yeah, he's aggravating really hard to get a feel for sometimes, and also probably crazy, but the guy knows how to coach football, and you know, maybe in 5-10 years.
He never lost anywhere more than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, but you know what? He makes teams good really quickly. And if we lose Pete Carroll, I would like for Paul Allen to give John Harbaugh a call right away.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
dude.
I would.
Did you see his effect on the players? Like, for example, Kaepernick was not like a morose down dude when he was in college. It was like he learned that from Harbaugh.
Yeah, but the guy won.
Any of my players.
But the guy won. And I'm not talking he's going to be like a lifetime coach.
There's not one way to win. There's not just one way of winning. And like we've talked about this before, I'd rather be like a lesser person than Belichick at winning, for example, but actually enjoy winning rather than be like Harbaugh. I don't think he enjoys anything. No.
Well, that's another topic for the future, but that's just a different taste for you. So we got a fantasy update. So in the Seahawks podcast update, the current standings are on the fan table side. I'm in 4th, Ross 6th, Zeb you're 10th. On the 3-step drop side, Lear's in 1st, Maddie's in 2nd, Coleman's in 11th. They all lost their games last week, so we're catching up. We do have 2 matchups this week. I am facing Maddie, so Maddie is 6-3, I'm 6-3. He's ahead based upon total points scored, so I'm 4th, he's 2nd. In 3rd is Red Alice, so shout out to her. Zeb, you and Leor are facing off. You are 3-6, and Leor is 7-2, so we know you're going to give him hell. But the question for the week is it better to trade for talent or hope to get something on the waiver wire? Especially this late in the year, it's hard to get talent, especially if you've got bye weeks. Ross, how do you try and approach it? Do you try to make a trade, or do you hope to get someone on free agency or the waiver wire?
Traditionally, I was a waiver wire guy. I think I mentioned the route last week. I'll stare at the available players and revisit it 20 times during the week, hoping somehow magically some amazing players like Joe Montana is just going to appear out of nowhere and be on my list and be available, but it doesn't happen. The last couple of years, I've really, really gone in for trades, and I enjoy the human. If you're in leagues where players are kind of active, that's the best way to go. I think it's fun, it's interactive, especially if you actually know them a little bit. You can kind of tease each other about it or cajole them a little bit. There's nothing worse than being in an inactive league though, and sending a trade request in week 1, week 7, you get just a notice in your mailbox that the guy rejected the trade and you forgot you sent it 7 weeks ago. So sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to just purely build by waiver. But yeah, late in the season it gets really hard. You're kind of hoping for injuries and hoping you're kind of high up on your waiver list, or kind of maybe very occasionally there's a late emerger, but not really.
Zeb, what about you?
The only way I get talent in fantasy football is by luck.
Andrew?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, he was my quarterback in one league going into the season, so you see how well I did there.
Yeah, I had him in a few.
I don't offer many trades. I'm rarely able to find something that makes sense for both players. You know, like it's always feels one sided. I definitely I'm always checking the waiver wire, but especially these leagues where we got 12 teams, there's almost never anything available.
Yeah.
And especially with these guys we're playing with who are always, on top of what's going on. Guys, Maddie, especially, us and Maddie and Leor and Coleman and those guys, and not Tikal, he doesn't know anything. But
yeah,
those guys are all they always know what's going on. Like they're on top of it. They know way sooner than I do if somebody's injured, who the next guy up is going to be. So it's really difficult.
I think it's really hard. Yeah, I think it's really hard because I have an issue where I have quarterbacks, and this is not in our podcast league, but I've got 3 quarterbacks, and I've got Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and Cam Newton. Now, they never all have, 3 great weeks in a row, so it's inconsistent, so they're not always, the best trade option. But no one wants those quarterbacks, so it's hard to make trades because even if you offer someone a fair deal, even if you, as objectively as you can think of a deal as fair, more times than not, people don't accept it. What I think works out is, as you were saying, Ross, if you talk to someone, you can work out a deal much better. It's a lot easier to say, hey, what are you looking for? But what I end up with is I get people, mostly assholes, trying to trade for Doug Baldwin and giving me their 2 trash wide receivers, thinking oh, you'll get 2 receivers for 1 Doug Baldwin. Asshole, I can't play these 2 guys. I want my 1 Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, a lot of people send real world trades. In real world, that might work, but in fantasy, that guy's not. Neither of the guys you're offering are going to start.
Yeah. All right.
The people out who treat you like a sucker, they think you don't know anything about football or something. That bothers me.
Yeah, it's a Seahawks fan table podcast league. I know how good Doug Baldwin is. Come on now.
You're not. Yeah, we all saw the announcement start this week. We all saw it.
All right, let's get into some predictions here. So we're going to start with Ross, first time off. You get to predict first.
Who's predicting first?
Ross going to predict first.
Okay.
So prediction, Seattle versus Arizona, final score.
Oh, score 13-10.
Oof.
Seattle.
Nail biter. We don't know who's winning though.
Seattle.
Okay.
Seattle. I know who's winning. You don't know who's winning.
That means 2 field goals. 2 field goals or a missed PAT.
Can I off topic for a second? I went and picked up Blair Walsh in a couple because I feel bad for that. I went and picked that dude up in fantasy in a couple of weeks.
Put a little faith in him.
Oh,
it's so trash that people are like. I mean, I have a friend in Tokyo. He's a Chicago Bears fan, so I feel bad for him as well. But he mailed me today, man, they didn't even bring in other kickers. I thought for sure I'd see him cut this week, and I'm like, dude, he had a bad game. Arguably, the right tackle had a worse game.
yeah.
I mean, it's just more obvious because you're the kicker. Everybody has a bad game. It doesn't mean he didn't suddenly forget how to kick. Before that game, he'd missed 1 all season. So I picked him up in a couple of fantasy leagues because I got faith.
Faith. It's a good trigger. Zeb, what about you?
I'm going full on optimism this week. I think our up and down trend is going to continue. I think we're going to beat the Cardinals 34-9.
Ooh, I wanna get what.
That's 2 field goals too.
No, it's not. He's going to miss an extra point.
All right.
Okay.
I want to be optimistic, and I want to say something like 28-15. I think it's going to be like Ross. I don't even think it's going to be much closer. I'm going to say 17-14. Seahawks squeak one out. They have to kick.
It's going to be really embarrassing because it's Drew Stanton. I checked ESPN and ESPN's an article saying Drew Stanton. What's the title? Drew Stanton still has the baseball bug, but left the dream behind.
How old is that article?
Last August.
Wow.
August 2016.
All right. Prediction number 2.
I've been talking about going to the batting cages, dude. Why is in Arizona?
Bruce Arians red shade. So what color shade is Bruce Arians going to be in the game? Is it going to be normal, tomato, or cherry?
I don't think it's going to be red. It's going to be blue, isn't it, this time?
Blue means he's blue. Lost oxygen and passed out.
Totally, yeah, dude. Like, they're going to be CPR on him, like, in the third quarter.
I think he's gonna be purple.
Purple.
That'd be
Eggplant. He'll be eggplant.
Yeah, eggplant.
Maybe if he has like a gradation, he'll start red and then kind of go blue and then finally hit purple.
Rhubarbish.
Rhubarbish.
I don't know what a rhubarb is.
What?
It's like a red celery
rhubarb.
stalk. It's a red celery stalk. That's
It's
what
like
it looks
red
like.
celery.
I don't know. In Japan, they always mix strawberry pie with rhubarb in it.
Rhubarb is it's literally a celery stalk. It looks like it, but it's red.
I don't like words with extra H's in them for no reason.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm gonna say he's gonna be super red, so I'm gonna go with the cherry. It's a deeper red than the tomato. He won't get to the blue or the purple stage. All right.
You predict he lives through the game?
He will live through the game, but it's the suffering because we're gonna finally kick a field goal to win it in his house.
Can we be really morbid and say, do you think he when he has a really big incident, is it going to be while he's actually at a game, or will it be at home?
It's probably going to be during the week. I don't think it'll be during a game.
Guys, this is very insensitive conversation.
I want the guy to retire so it doesn't happen.
If you want sensitive topics, you should go check out the Triple B Cup podcast.
Oh.
Seahawks fan pass ratio. Is it going to be even, or will it be pass heavy? It's not going to be run heavy. We're just going to throw that out. That's a meaningless prediction. Even or pass heavy?
I don't know, man. Like, it bothers me that every week that people. It's not on purpose. We're a balanced team. No, we're not a balanced team. Just admit it. We'll all be better off. So I think it's going to be pass heavy again.
Zeb?
My instinct is to say that it's going to be pass heavy, but I'm starting Rawls this week on a whim.
Nice,
wow.
Nice. Faith, just like Blair Walsh.
Yeah, maybe this week it'll work, and the kid will get 20 to 25 runs, and it looks maybe things will just go well, and we'll be able to. Never mind.
I'm going pass heavy.
Say, Rawls,
Pass heavy.
Rawls
There's just. It's not looking good for us.
Do you know? I think Russell Wilson is has the third most passing attempts in the NFL.
Yeah,
He's third most yards.
he also has the most 20 yards passes thrown for 20 plus yards. He's like top in the league.
Okay.
He's on pace for like 4,600. He's on pace for a career year for sure.
So if we're gonna do that, I'd like him to just go on and get 5,000 yards, man.
Just get to that plateau.
Yeah.
All right.
Some of these picks are concerning, though. I gotta admit.
All right. I agree.
The picks are up, aren't they?
A couple silly interceptions.
Seahawks score in the first quarter, yes or no? And we're talking about offense, not Bobby Wagner sacking Drew Stanton for a safety. That doesn't count. He's the seventh leading scorer. Seventh leading scorer in the team.
The offense will not score in the first quarter. Can you score in the first quarter? No.
I think they'll get one. I think they'll punch one in the waning seconds of the quarter.
I'm gonna have to say no. They've done it once out of the past 8 games, so the odds are not in their favor.
So they're due.
No, it doesn't work that way. Drew Stanton interceptions over under 1.5.
Over.
Over.
I'm gonna say over as well. Adrian Peterson rushing yards over under 80 yards.
Under. Sorry, I just jumped the gun. But.
That's all right. Over.
Over. I'm gonna say under. Seahawks have actually done a really good job containing Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, but if they give it to him 40 times and he gets 2 yards a carry, that's 80.
Well, they're not going to get it 40 times because it's going to be a low-scoring affair.
40 times.
Who's going to have more?
He carried 37 times on Sunday. 37.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen against us.
Yeah.
I was shocked because, at one point I had checked their stats just because to kind of convince myself that Adrian Peterson actually really is done. And at one point he had 11 carries for 25 yards or something ridiculous like that. I'm like, okay, see, he's done. And then, I'm driving home, trying to keep my mind off some of the games, so I'm checking all the stats, and he had 37 yards for 139 yards. Sorry, 37 carries for 139 yards.
Yeah, but they're playing the Niners. Doesn't mean anything except unless we're playing them. Who's going to have the most sacks in the game? Freeney, Clark, Bennett, Wagner, or Reed? Those are the top 5 sack leaders on the team.
Doesn't Coleman have a sack?
Yep.
No, they actually took away a sack and gave it full to.
They took away
Dwight.
half a sack from somebody. Gave it to Freeney.
Yeah, they gave him a whole. They took it away from Coleman and gave him a whole sack.
Oh, that's weak.
That is weak.
I'm gonna. People can't stop Freeney's spin move, man. I'm gonna go with Freeney.
Okay.
That dude's been doing that same spin move for like 18 years, and nobody can.
I think we're going to have 3 guys with 2 sacks.
Ooh.
Bennett,
Ooh, it's a tie.
Freeney, and Clark are all going to have 2. And then every single other player on defense is going to have 1.
It's going to be like 45 sacks.
Yeah, give or
That'll
take.
be amazing for Seahawks defense.
It'd be cool if we could get 10, man.
I'm gonna say Clark is gonna lead the team. I think he's been playing really well, and I like what he's doing. And I think in a dome-ish area on grass, I think he's got the best chance. All right, so field goals made over under 2.5.
Under.
Total or just by us?
Just by Blair Walsh.
Well, my prediction is 13-10, so I have to say 2, so it's under. But I won't be surprised if he kicks like 4. I wouldn't be surprised if we won like 15-10. It was all field goals.
15-12, something crazy like that.
That would be the worst. I'll be so mad if that's how that game ends up.
Hey, we had that game last year on Thursday night where it ended up in a
6-6?
tie. Yeah.
Oh Jesus.
My God, that was the most annoying game ever to watch.
That was a terrible game. Zeb, you said over or under? Sorry.
Under.
Under? Yeah, I'm going to go with under as well. Just not a lot happening in that game, in this game. Low scoring affair. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it's going to be a really boring game to watch.
It is?
I think it's going to be a really boring game.
Well, Drew Stanton's not going to make it super interesting, so it's up to Seattle, so we'll see. But, gentlemen, that's our show. Shoutouts.
Go to triplebpodcast.com and listen to our biting social commentary.
And they also do a spoiler-free review of Stranger Things 2, worth checking out.
We did go spoiler-free, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say yes, you did. Everyone said it was too hard, but I don't know what they were smoking, but yeah.
Well, how do you get spoiler-free? I mean, like, it's nice.
No, you talk about
how a show made you think and feel as opposed to what happened in.
Yeah.
Okay, how did it make you feel? Well, I guess I have to go listen. Don't spoil it for me. My shout-outs. Yeah, I don't have any this week.
None?
Shout out to my cat. My cat was really good. Like, I just came back from 11 days on vacation to stay at home because my friend who usually babysits him couldn't. So, but he was really cool.
All right, shout out to Ross's cat. Check out the Triple B podcast. Shout out to my coworkers for always hearing us randomly rant about the Seahawks for a while. Go to Seahawks Podcast on Twitter. Look for that. Go to Seahawks Fan Table on Facebook. Go to hawkscast.com. That's our forum. We've got a lot of great discussions about football and everything else. Check it out. Thank you for watching and listening, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.